This is Invisible Inc., the podcast for under-resourced women entrepreneurs. And I'm your host, Shubha Chakravarti, founder of Achieve. In this podcast, I talk to women entrepreneurs at every stage of their journey about the challenges, the highs, the lows, and what they've learned along the way. We'll also hear from experts who share valuable tips on how to succeed the smart way. Let's jump in. If you're a woman in STEM trying to establish yourself, it can feel almost impossible to get your foot in the door. Double that if you're also a person of color. And once you're in the door, you're only starting. You still have to deliver, get paid, get new business, find and keep great people, and have the means to pay them. It feels like an impossible task. Impossible, that is, unless you're Kimberly Moore, founder of KDM Engineering. In this episode, Kimberly talks about how she crafted a path successfully as the first and only African-American woman managing engineering design for very large utilities, how she cracked the problem of finding and keeping qualified people, and still manages to give back to the community in very deep and meaningful ways. Here's Kimberly with her story of inspiration, hard-headed business acumen, and a very big heart for giving back. Good afternoon, Kimberly. We're delighted to have you here. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So you have a really interesting background. I was looking you up. You have a very strong STEM background. You're pursuing a PhD. Tell us a little bit more about you and how you ended up on the entrepreneurial path.
I've always been really, really good at math and science, so I knew whatever I was going to do was going to be in that realm, right? I did not know what engineering was coming up, and I was introduced to that my senior year, really, at Whitney Young High School. I had an AP science teacher who told me what engineering kind of was, so I decided to pursue that path and go ahead and apply for that at NIU. So when I was at NIU, I had some really good counselors, and they were able to direct me in the path of electrical, which is where I stayed. After that, I pretty much stayed on the engineering side through my career, went back to NIU, pursued my master's. And when I came out, I went to the consulting side of power, where I was on the utility side before. And when I came back on the consulting side, I really took a liking to distribution, power, and how fast that really moved as opposed to where I was. And I pretty much hit a ceiling at my last place and decided that maybe, entrepreneurship would be better. Now, I had always done my own business of some sort, just not in engineering. But, none of those really succeeded. I either got bored or, plans change or whatever. But I decided to go ahead and experiment with entrepreneurship in engineering. I was doing it. Why not? And this is where I am now.
Give us a taste. What kind of other entrepreneurial ventures did you pursue before you landed on engineering?
Oh my gosh, it was so much. I was just a hustler. So I used to buy broken motorcycles from Craigslist when that was a thing, and I would fix those up in my garage and resell those. I built computers for schools for a while until all of the big names started doing low-priced, all-in-one computers. You name it. I had a recording studio, a music recording studio. I probably tried to attempt something of the sort.
Inspiring. So tell us about KDM Engineering. What does the firm do?
Sure. So KDM is a diverse-owned electrical and civil engineering company. We perform design engineering work for utilities and telecommunication companies. So the AT&Ts and T-Mobiles of the world, and then the ComEds and the Nicors of the world. That's where we kind of have our niche market.
And for those of us like me who don't know exactly what that is, can you give us a bird's eye view of what a project might look like?
Absolutely. Our projects range, but basically whenever you want to go to your kitchen and make sure that when you open your refrigerator, it has power, we have to make sure that you have the power that goes into your home that allows that to occur. So if you think about all the poles that you see outside or the big green transformer boxes that you might have in your front or your back lawn, those are designs that KDM would have touched.
And is that why you're pursuing a PhD now? Tell us a little bit more about that.
So I was pursuing that because eventually I want to go back and teach. I do a lot with my nonprofit now in terms of talking, but I want to be able to also teach. And I think the easiest route, you can just fall right into teaching after pursuing your doctoral program. So I wanted to really give back in terms of teaching youth, teaching underrepresented youth, and for me to be taken seriously in the industry. I think that's one of the things you need to have.
Hold that thought because that's fascinating. So now coming back to KDM. So you knew you hit a wall, you knew you want to do something entrepreneurial. What happens next? What's the idea? What did you do first? How did that whole thing play out?
So there's a lot that they don't teach you, right? When you're just an employee rather. And I had gotten pretty, what I thought, right, was pretty high at my prior job. I was helping, I developed rates, I was reviewing contracts, I brought over my clients, built that whole business, basically a mini KDM underneath the umbrella of another company, right? So I was allowed grace to succeed or fail or do better, try again underneath their umbrella. So that was great. And I thought I knew everything I needed to know about running a business until I started to run my own business. And that's when you learn more about HR and you learn more about IT needs and you learn more about employees or people in general, right? And contracts in terms of relationships. Because I will say the one piece of advice that I was given from my first client, who was ComEd, was before they would give me business, they said, hey, listen, we know who Kimberly Moore is. We know your reputation as an engineer on your own, but you're not going to be the one doing these designs. We don't know who KDM is. So you have to establish yourself as a business before we can trust that, you could do work for us. And that really hit home for me because my whole idea was predicated on going out on my reputation. I had great reputation and relationships with people, but that's not all it depends on. They also want to know because they're right. I'm not doing designs today. So they have to trust in our training process, in our hiring process, and everything else to be confident in giving us the opportunities that they've given us thus far to be able to help us continue to grow.
So what did that look like? What were the top two or three things that you had to establish so that ComEd would now come and trust KDM versus trusting Kimberly Moore?
So they gave me kind of like a roadmap, I'll say. They told me, hey, work as a sub for some of our existing primes, get acclimated, build your bench, build your backlog, and, continue to do this work. And we can always come back and look at opportunities that we can give you directly. And that's exactly what I did. I went to one of their primes. I was a sub for them for about a year and a half. And then after a year and a half of me organically growing, because it wasn't like I got some kind of investment, this was all me by myself. So I had one person, and that one person turned into 5 people after a year. That 5 turned into 15 the next year, and then onward from there. But it was developing myself and my ability to do work as KDM as a sub first, making sure we had competent hires because just like today, I mean, the market is like crazy right now, but then it was getting crazy as well. And you have to make sure you have people that fit with what you're trying to do, even if you're small. They have to fit with what you're trying to do and mold within the culture that you're trying to develop because you can't develop the culture if you have the wrong people from the start. So it was, developing people or getting the right people, getting the opportunities, and then performing. I mean, after all of that, you have to perform. You have to perform. They're not going to give you a second look if you have all of this built up and you cannot perform.
And that's a great segue. The work you're doing is knowledge work. It's professional services. So hiring is key, as you just yourself mentioned. What did you do to hire those first few key people? Because your whole reputation was going to ride on those.
So the first couple of people were all word of mouth referrals from my prior client, from ComEd. During that time, 2014, we were coming out of a recession and there were a lot of people available at the time, opposite of today, right? There's nobody available today. But at the time, there were a lot of good people out there and it was word of mouth like, man, we used to work with John Doe. He has since, been laid off over the recession or he took a break over the recession. If you could get him back, I think he would be a great hire for you. So I did have some friends that still worked at the utility that were able to direct me in the right path to find people to help me get started. And the following year, after I had my base set, the following year, I got all college grads. And we just did a lot of training. And those college grads stayed with me.
One little sidebar on that. One of the key things that entrepreneurs have to deal with is setting compensation, things that impact your financials. Did you have help? It seems like such a new and, foreign area. How did you tackle just high level the whole question of setting compensation and getting used to that part of running a business?
So for us, we focused a lot because I wasn't able to hire a lot of the people that were available that were still working. There were those that were still working, looking to move up, but then there were those that retired, or that there were those that had taken a break from the industry during that recession that I was able to convince, again, based off of what our goals, to come over and set lower than what would have been top of line salaries at the time, but offering different things culturally, like, hey, here's additional PTO, or hey, here's what I'm thinking a bonus structure might look like. In terms of, we were small, so it was just a split. It was just like, hey, this is what we got. Let's just split it. Thanks for taking a risk of being with KDM, because it was just myself. And then we added one person at a time for a year. So to take a chance on a firm that had nobody, and then we were adding one at a time, was a big risk. So I had to choose individuals that understood that risk, but saw the opportunity. And those individuals understood at the time that I might not get as much as if I were to come out of retirement and go directly back to the utility. But it's not about the money. It's about having a good reputation, doing good design work, not being super stressed, having a lot of, PTO, and eventually being a part of something that we know is going to be greater.
And the other part of kind of coming out of another firm and going out to do something that's pretty much the same exact thing, many people in your situation might find themselves in a non-compete situation. Did you ever have that issue? And if so, how did you deal with it?
I didn't have that issue. Again, the firm that I worked in before, KDM, was also a small firm when I got there. So they weren't small like KDM small in terms of like 5 people, but they had probably 100 people, 90 something people. So it started to grow when I brought over energy work. That's when it started to grow. And then we had all these different departments, and the other departments grew, but they were able to make good profit, good revenue on the energy side, which allowed them to grow in other areas as well. So they began to grow, but you pretty much knew everybody at the company when you were working there, and you spent a lot of late nights. You went out together, you got on the train together, and everything like that. So I was really graciously brought over by my prior supervisor and the owner of the company, and there was a really big trust factor there, and it was great. I had a great time. As a matter of fact, I don't think that had the recession happened, had my father, he got sick during that time, had he not gotten sick, I probably would still be there. We were having a good time. It wasn't like I was, oh my gosh, this is the worst place ever, I'm looking for the first opportunity out. But we were having a good time. So, and I still talk to them. Matter of fact, we do business together, my prior firm. So, and I talk to the previous CEO and the new CEO all the time, and I'm like, thank you.
The best possible scenario that you can imagine for this work. That's awesome. It sounds like you work with very large clients. Did you have a funding need? Because I would imagine that there's long delays before you get paid. So did you have a big funding need even though you were a professional services offering? And if so, how did you tackle that challenge?
Absolutely. So I don't want to get on the podcast and act like this is the easiest thing and this is how we did, we accomplished these things. I had a lot of challenges when we first started. And matter of fact, one of the last things that propelled me and made me continue my journey was the passing of a few of my family members. So my dad passed one year, my older brother passed in a following year, cancer, all of them were cancer related. And then my grandma passed Christmas of 2013. And I was just like, holy crap, what am I going to do? Because I felt like I was going to give up. But the one thing was, I promised each and every one of them that I was going to continue and that KDM was doing well. So 2014, how we were able to actually make payroll is my grandma had a life insurance policy that she left to us. And I had to use the life insurance policy money and start my payroll. So that's like one of those one-off kind of situations where I'm like, where am I going to get this money to pay these people? And I had to use that life insurance money to do that. And that gave me a bridge enough to wait the 45 to 60 days to get funded from our invoicing. And then we get to the whole matter of banking. The banking system is there for when you don't need them. They're not there for when you do. I was always told that and never understood that because I was like, all right, well, we want to grow. We want to go faster. How do we grow faster? And nobody would really touch us because we were A, so new, and B, in the very beginning, it's always easier to grow at an exponential rate as opposed to when you're in the millions. So we were able to grow so super fast. And everyone kept saying, well, I'll wait until you begin to even out. When you even out, we can look at your finances. We didn't even out. We didn't even out until the pandemic. So from 2014 until the pandemic, we were just on this skyrocket exponential growth pattern. That part was amazing, but that also meant that banks were like, well, when is she going to like equal out so we can take a look because we don't know how to lend to her. Is it based on last year? Is it based on right now? So we always had a problem getting funding because nobody wanted to take that risk on us and try to assist us with that financial need that we had.
So how did you overcome that?
Luckily, we were just in a place that we really didn't need that. I mean, I kept fighting for it and I fought for it until I got it finally based off of a relationship. I'm going to always stress relationships because they're very important. And he's also from NIU. He's a Husky, fellow Husky. And he was a senior lender at a bank. He had my back to the point where they were just like, okay, we believe it. All right, cool. Here's a line of credit. And for a long time, I didn't even use it because I was just like, I wanted to stick it to him, right? I was like, I didn't even need it. I just wanted to have it. And here's my proof that I don't need you. I just want to have it just in case for growth opportunities and the like. We did right at that point to make sure that we had a facility in case we needed it, which of course during pandemic, right? But before then we didn't need it. I just wanted to have it just in case. But it was rough just to get it. But like I said, relationships and that senior lender was able to get us through a door that most diverse businesses have a problem getting to.
Has that situation improved over time, given the fact that you're a diverse owner, or is it better now or worse or the same?
It's about the same. About the same. Yeah, it has not really improved. We're not the only sector that went through a pandemic, right? The whole world went through a pandemic. But during that time, banks also got squeezed. And they were like, okay, well, we don't want to lend out as much money. So I don't really think it necessarily got better. I would say for us, it stayed the same. But during a challenging time like this, if you were to go out right now and try to reestablish yourself or ask for or try to look for lending today, it's going to be even harder because they expect you to show that you have not gone through a pandemic.
That's fascinating and unexpected.
Yes, you would think the opposite, but if you on your books show that you've experienced some turmoil over 2021 and 22, they want to see you turn the corner before they can assist you. And that is a direct quote from my prior lender. I'm still there, I still have my relationship, but for us to try to grow today, they expect more than they did before the pandemic so that they feel more comfortable about lending dollars out to small businesses. And that's just not always going to be the case.
It's a complicated calculus from being in banking, I can tell you that, but I certainly appreciate, where you're coming from. So then moving to the other important piece of any successful business, which is getting customers, getting orders. Sounds like you started off really well because you had an established base, you had this sterling reputation with your future clients. Once you had to get past that, how did you then think about acquiring new clients, and how is that process working out? What were your learnings from that?
So that's a good question. So for us, it was challenging because during the pandemic, for one thing that we have to do is we usually go to conferences. We usually take clients out to dinner. We travel to see them, So we had to learn a whole new world of business development and trying to establish relationships, right? But secondarily to that, I would say that the other issue that we did have was the fact that besides the pandemic being that choke point, In utility, I'm only speaking for the utility part. In utility, contracts come out once every 3 to 5 years. So your business developing years in advance of the opportunity, because once the opportunity is present again, you're on the forefront and you're going to be invited at least to the table to be able to put your best foot forward and try to establish relationships and get a contract. So we did that during the pandemic. And then when we came out, it was, hey, can you do this for us? We remember you. You used to do X, Y, and Z, and you're blah, blah, blah. And we're like, holy crap. Now we put the irons in the pot and they all got hot. And it's a champagne problem, right? So, you're like, great, but you don't have the people to do the work, because the people are what's missing. And that's what's needed for professional service businesses. And it's definitely challenging from a small business perspective, because now you saw Biden just approved that bill. A lot of money's going to pump into a lot of different areas: infrastructure, utilities, renewables, all that. That's my space. So we have a lot of big companies now that are coming into my space that weren't in my space before. So it's going to be a body of work that everybody can get a piece, right? And sit at the table and eat. It's just who is going to develop the talent and keep the talent. It's always a matter right now with today's generation of keeping the talent, and who is going to be able to be repetitive, come back and do great work, great quality, great safety, and be competitive and repetitive, in the market. So I want to say positive, because we all get a chance to eat, and it's not just like the big five or whatever can do something, but that the big five are coming in and they are definitely making their presence felt. I will say that.
We're rooting for you, so you can be sure.
Thank you.
So you mentioned this fact about being competitive brings up an interesting point. You face these bid opportunities, sounds like every 3 to 5 years. Now, clearly inflation is super high, and then you're locked into rates. Can you talk a little bit about how you approach pricing without disclosing anything proprietary, just a philosophy and an approach to how you smartly price your offering?
So the one thing, again, I'll go back to when I first started. The one thing I did not understand as an employee was what was baked into the rate that my company had for me. So I didn't understand that until I started my own business. And I was like, wait, you guys think I'm making all this money? Like, I'm not paying you $50 an hour and I'm charging out 100. I don't make 50. There's your benefits, there's your insurance, there is the rent, the lights, the computers that you use, the software. Like, there's all this stuff that gets baked into this overhead rate. And most companies only do like 10% profit. It's not a lot. That means for every $50 that, $100 that I charge out, you make 50, I make 10. So it's not as bad. No, it's different. Obviously, I'm not going to say every company is like that, but I know here, I can speak for here. We have those conversations and we try to show our employees transparency and say, hey, this is how much this is. This is how much it costs for you to be here. And then this is how much we're going to get. If you go back and you do something wrong on the project and have to work more that we can't charge the client to, that little bit of profit just went away. And if you have to do it a third time, hopefully you don't. But if you do, then now I'm in the negative. And so we have those discussions and those meetings and we show the employees, because we want them to know this is not you make 50, I make 50. This is not how, that works. So what we try to do is every time there is a major adjustment in terms of a market, like where we are in the market right now, I approach my clients and say, hey, I know we negotiated an increase for standard cost of living, but you guys are experiencing the same pain that we are. This is not going to be your standard 3% every year. Look at where things are. So we've been able to go back and talk to our clients. And I mean, we're not trying to price gouge either. We're also very transparent about our books and showing where we are and what we're paying our folks today and how we're trying to keep them. Because we have other things that are built into our overhead that a lot of companies don't necessarily do, where they're cost cutting. We're spending money. We have somebody 40 hours a week downstairs, make an appointment, and you can go talk to her about whatever. Your career, yes. But if your mom is getting on your nerves, you want to go talk to her, cool. If work is driving you insane to the point where you haven't shared with anybody, but you have 4 projects and you don't know how those 4 projects are going to get done and it's weighing on you, go talk to her. Go talk to her. And it's a separation. She has her own set of books, her own server. I can't go into her files and say, I wonder what this employee said to her during. I can't do that. This is totally secret, up to you. If you share what you want to share, and then you give her permission to share what, you want her to share with us. So that's just, certain things that we just, during the pandemic, I felt that it's when we started that, I felt that was important. Like, even we have people who have used her and left the company, like used her to get through the mental hard time and said, thank you. I now have the courage to leave the state and go try something different. Kudos to you. That's totally fine. But that is what it's here for in terms of what she's supposed to be here to do for our employees.
I love what you said about financial transparency, which brings me to another key part of being an entrepreneur, which is managing the finances. How equipped did you feel going in to manage the finances? What learning did you have to accomplish? And what was that bridge from there, or the journey from there to mastering it yourself, to deciding how and what to share with your employees in terms of the financial performance?
I didn't know as much as I thought I knew when I first started. Again, we're math and science geeks, all of us, but that's a different level of math and science, right? When you're talking about your profitability, your margins, your AR, your AP, it's a totally different thing. So when I first started, obviously I got QuickBooks and I'm trying to look at the free videos, and it was a mess. But Google University, I'm telling you, I have a degree in it at this point, but Google saved me. There are a lot of free courses on YouTube. There are a lot of free courses from different universities. I think a lot of the universities now have free available business courses online as their way to give back to, the business community. So just learning where to find those courses and how to sign up for them and how to review them and taking notes and testing it out on my own and things like that. That's how I was able to figure out the numbers piece. And then and then we grew, of course, and now I have like accounting manager and things like that. But from the transparency standpoint, I just knew what I wanted to know as an employee. And granted, I'm not going to get all the way down to the weeds about how much my rent costs and how much the professional liability insurance is renewable and what the increase. I'm not going to get down to that, right? But in terms of just having a little transparency to let them know that we aren't out here, at least KDM is not out here splitting a rate down the middle and saying, you take this and we'll take that. There are actual other things that need to be taken account, because I also feel like that today's generation of workers, they're asking these questions. Like, they want to know. And it's not that they want to know so they can all go out and start their own business. They want to know because they want to see how companies are valuing them. And is there room for an increase? Like, am I performing well on this job? Am I meeting expectations, or do I have work to do in terms of, my career growth and expectation setting? So I feel like that extra transparency lets employees know where the health of the company. A lot of companies also, they not only just want to work for a company that has a great social impact or social cause. Is my job going to be here tomorrow? Groupon lays off 500. Go Health lays off 1,000. This company is laying off whatever. So of course we see that. And what do I get? I get little messages here. Hey, just wondering if you've seen how things are right now in the eco world of Chicago. What do you think that means for us? I know exactly what they're asking. Are we next? Is KDM in a position that we're going to be able to move forward? So I think that financial transparency also helps them make job decisions in terms of, I like it here, but are we laying off people tomorrow? That also helps them with those decisions.
And to kind of build on that, when you talk about financial transparency, you did mention it was high level that you share. Do you share cash? Do you share the forward looking order book? What are the big blocks of things you talk about with your employees?
Absolutely. So we get down to, like I said, the rate structure and basically how we do that. But we also share new business, and we also share the efficiency of the projects that we have. And to an extent, because what we don't want to do is people here, they know who works on what projects. So if I have specific projects up that say these four did not make money, but these three did, they know who worked on those projects. So that's embarrassing as well. So we don't want to do that, here in the firm. So we share how we did overall on a book of business. Let's just say ComEd, right? Because Exxon's broken up. So let's say, here's how we did on the ComEd book of business. Here's how we're doing in Baltimore. Here's how we're doing in Philly. Here's how we're doing with American Electric Power. So we break it down into groups like that. And then even further, we'll break it down in segments. So we have electrical here, we have telecommunication here, and we also have civil. So, hey, out of AEP, here was what we did in telecom. Here was what we did in the power. So, we're able to break that down and show how well or not so well, or how we just started, in certain segments so that they get a feeling. And then we show them the potential book of business that can occur if we become more efficient, or if we're already efficient, if we have more people as a new area. There is always some opportunity for them to be able to move around, because that's the other thing. They want opportunity. They don't want to just say, okay, I work for a company that just works in Chicago. We're getting that a lot as well. They want to say, hey, well, do you have aspirations of getting to Texas soon? And we're like, hey, this is an opportunity. We'll definitely, if that's where, a lot of you are looking, we'll look in that area. But I think that's helpful for them as well, because they can just let us know that. As opposed to a bigger company where if they want to work in Texas and you want to tell the CEO of, I don't know, power engineers that you want to go be in Texas and they aren't in Texas, they're not going to say, oh, yeah, sure, we'll look into it.
Which is an excellent example of the benefits of some of that transparency and that, interactive nature of how you do business. Is there any other sort of huge example that pops in your mind where something happened that was very positive, that would have been unexpected in a different environment as a result of being that transparent and that proactive about educating your employees on the financial performance?
I would say I have been able to save a few people from leaving the firm just because of the transparency that we have given. And I will also say that I've gotten a lot of volunteers in terms of our nonprofit and being open and sharing those opportunities here at KDM as well. That helps people stay as well. Like, oh, we have a nonprofit. Can we talk to the kids? Can we do whatever? Like, absolutely. Matter of fact, let me share with you what it is that we're doing over here on this side, and you can fill in wherever you want to fill in. And that transparency has had some people say, oh, I love talking to individuals and kids and blah, blah, blah. And those would be two things that I would think popped up. But the number one would be saving people from leaving.
Excellent. So that's a fantastic segue into Calculated Genius. I know you have a huge nonprofit involvement. Can you talk to us about what you do there, what the aspiration is, and what the organization does?
Absolutely. So Calculated Genius, I'll refer to it as CG. We do three things. We provide a bridge in terms of programming, because CPS, they have budget shortfalls, and when they do, a lot of programs get cut. So one of the things that we are really interested in is going to be STEM. So we try to bridge that gap for summer programming by offering a 6-week summer program course to CPS students, high school students that are interested and sign up for that course. That course comprises a lot of different volunteers from a lot of different companies still around that STEM area. It could be from Motorola, Facebook, KPMG, whatever. And they come in and they discuss different branches of engineers. Some of them have examples and toys and little activities that some of these kids, I keep saying kids, young adults, excuse me, teenagers, there you go. A lot of the teenagers get a chance to do and participate in making bridges out of spaghetti noodles and, things like that. And then we also focus on the entrepreneurial mind frame. I think that's what separates our summer program, because we're not saying everybody has to go out and build a business, right? But you can be an entrepreneur within the organizations that you work for. You can control your career within the organizations that you work for. So we just make sure that that mindset is there, that they don't have to be complacent just being this person who sits here every single day for 30 years. Like, you can do something different. So we combine those two. We combine STEM programming and teaching and volunteers along with entrepreneurial kind of topics over the summer. And the next tier is we give scholarships to women going to college in computer science or electrical engineering or engineering, not even electrical. I'm just being selfish, but engineering of any kind and computer science, we give scholarships. So we have a whole program application. We, as a board, we review every single application and decide who is going to get what size scholarship. They range from $500 up to $5,000. And we're also trying to do more fundraising because we want to get to a point where we have renewable scholarships that will occur every year that they're in school. So that's the second arm. And then the third arm is more of a mentorship arm. And that's because there is an attrition rate there for women and underrepresented youth that go to college that are sometimes first generation. And if they want to pick a dorm, like, who are they going to talk to, right? If they want to pick classes or they have some challenges figuring out what type of engineering they want to get, who are they going to talk to? So we've developed a mentorship arm that volunteers donate 1 to 2 hours a month, and they have a mentee. And basically, that's what that time is spent doing, helping them with everything college related, or even if they want to take that hour and just vent. But we have to make sure we monitor that attrition rate, because I know a lot of young individuals that went to school for one of those two, for engineering especially, and they're not doing engineering today. They didn't graduate doing engineering. They loved engineering, but when they graduated, they were just like, they spent a year in it. I know some that spent a year in it and they didn't feel welcomed where they were, so they got out and went to go do something different. They did not feel like they could overcome the challenge. I know one of the women that worked for a prior company that I worked alongside with, not for, they were out in the field. They were a civil engineer, and they were out in the field, and they were surrounded by a bunch of guys that were working on the same project. And the jokes, I put that in quotation, was, well, your husband let you out? Or, hey, are you not intimidated being the only one here, with a bunch of us? Or, like, that shouldn't be.
I agree.
Give me a break. So, I mean, there's a lot of women, for whatever reason, they don't have a lot of support. And if they do have support, that support might not know how to support them because they're not in that role or had never been in that role. And a lot of women and a lot of underrepresented youth get out of the field. They don't have to. They shouldn't have to. It shouldn't be a thing, but it is a thing. We can't save the world from that thing, right? So some of that stuff's going to happen. But we want to provide support. So if it does happen, you can turn around and say, oh, I'm not worried about being here with y'all. Y'all should be worried about being here with me.
I love it. Count me a lifelong fan of what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
How did you start this? Like, what gave you the idea? It's not like you weren't busy trying to run your own firm. How did that come about?
So what I was doing when I first started was I was still going to high schools and just speaking, but it was just me speaking, right? Because I wanted to do that. And I said, man, I really want to be able to give back. We weren't making a lot of money, but I wanted to be able to give back somehow. So the whole line of thinking was, all right, how do I give back? Okay, I can only give this. So I want to be able to give more. I have to start a nonprofit. How do I do that? I need a board? Oh, crap. Who's going to be my board? So I was asking family and friends that were in the industry and outside of the industry that were just professional women. And I was like, hey, you want to be on this board? I'm starting this nonprofit. I want to be able to do this. So then I went to another few friends and I said, but I got scholarships when I was in school. I can't tell you who I got scholarships from, though. And I said, man, I don't want to be that organization that just blindly gives out scholarships and nobody comes back and helps us do anything else, right? So we had to do something else. And somebody was like, programming. Boom. Okay, we're going to do programming. How do we do programming? So that's kind of like the trajectory of how this all started. It started just an idea and me talking to high school kids and then saying, I want to do more than just speak. I don't have any money. How do I do more? And that's kind of like the role. It just kind of spiraled from there. It was all right. We got to fundraise, but I can't fundraise as KDM. I have to fundraise as a 501c3, and we have to get that established. Talk to my legal team. They did all of the paperwork. Then we had to form a board, and now we have a board. And some of the people on the board, I went to this 10,000 small businesses program with Goldman Sachs a while ago, and half the people that were on the board I met from the Goldman Sachs program. They were either mentors, teachers, or speakers at some of these Goldman Sachs events. And so that was a great program just from a networking standpoint. That was awesome. Little plug to them. So that's kind of how it all got started and happened. And it was kind of organic. And even to this day, we have an executive director. He's planning all kinds of fundraising events. We just got through with the STEMinist event, which is just a big event we put on here we use the KDM auditorium for that, but we bring the students, their guardians or parents. We provide them like food and like beverages, water, and we present all the scholarships, and they walk up and get their scholarship paper, and it's balloons and flowers, and parents are crying, and they're like, oh my God, I don't know how they would have been. And I'm crying because now their parents are crying. That was a great event. And then we followed up with the summer school program. And I think we're going to continue the program throughout the fall, but just 1 and 2 type of classes at a time, not like a full 6-week thing. Just every so often we'll have a topic and we'll invite CPS kids to join.
That is truly inspiring. I wish you every success. So kind of taking a big step back now, you had and continue to have an amazing journey, really inspiring vision. What have been some of the biggest external challenges you've faced, as an African American woman, particularly in an extremely intensive STEM field, going out on your own?
I would say the main thing that I have faced, I have been very, very fortunate. And I am also realizing that, well, not realizing today, but I have realized by talking to others that are trying to do the same thing, that when I tell you that right place, right time, AKA just really being blessed in terms of the opportunities, if you really looked at the opportunities and how they came about for us, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Again, when I first started, we were a sub to a prime that was working on the system. That prime just decided to quit and go back home. Home for them was East Coast. And we took over. I asked, I said, well, we're doing all the work anyway, so can we take over the rest of the prime contract? And they were like, absolutely. And I took it over for the remaining year and a half. And then when it was time to renew, they renewed us because we were doing well. But how many times does that happen? Where Prime just says, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. You can have it. What? So that just does not occur. And I recognize that. So I recognize that some things, some walls were blown away for me before I even got there. But there are still some challenges that we face, which include being that diverse firm, because a lot of people now want to work for the big company. They want to work for a big company that's global, that will give them travel opportunities, that can pay them a lot more money, but may not have the culture. But it depends on the person. Some people really appreciate being at market, but having great culture. And some are like, screw the culture. I have a financial goal and I got to get there. So it's understandable. People are different for that reason, and that's fine. But financial assistance has always been a challenge for KDM in terms of having assistance from banks. Yeah, that's always been a challenge for us to this day. Again, it's because every year we're growing faster than the prior years, and they always want to lend based on the prior year's tax returns. But I've already surpassed that, and it's March. I need you to fast forward and look at what we're doing. But again, thankfully, we weren't in a position prior to the pandemic to really need it. Been very fortunate there. Our pathway has definitely been, a different type of pathway to get to this point, because we are still, I believe, the only Black woman-owned engineering firm that's a prime for Exelon. We also, I believe, were the youngest firm that they had ever kind of like brought on to their system back in 2014. They took a huge risk, on us being prime. And luckily, we have performed.
Not surprised, but great to hear.
Yeah.
So clearly there have been external challenges. Have there been moments, dark moments inside, internally, when you felt, how can I pull through this? Or you had to really dig deep into yourself? And if so, what were those and how did you get over those?
I say now. I mean, this pandemic, I think, affected everybody, right? So I don't think I stand alone in that. But at the same time, I can only speak for me. And with that said, this past year, 12 months from like the summer of this year to summer of last year, has been a roller coaster. Like, we were on the way up of this roller coaster for years. And now we're finally having our first, I'll call it a market correction. We've never had a market correction. We've just continued to go up and up and up and up and up. And this is the first market correction that KDM has ever seen. And because of that, it does give me some pause, and it does give me times of reflection where I'm like, did I do something wrong? What did I do? What did I say? Where did I turn? There was a fork in the road somewhere, and I took a wrong turn, or maybe I went straight. I'm not sure, but I'm in that now, and I don't have a response in terms of what I did to get out, because we're still trying to get out. And when I say trying to get out is, we had again, instead of the bigger companies seeing the opportunity in power, saying, you know what, now is the time to groom fresh grads coming out of school so that they will be ready and we will be ready to take on all the additional work. They said, no, screw this. We're just going to grab people from other small businesses. And that's what they did. And we, being the smallest, the youngest on the system, when you grab 30 people from KDM, you're grabbing, with experience, you're grabbing my entire workforce. Everybody that knew how to work on the system of that frame of 5 to 8 years old, in terms of how long they've been, that we trained and groomed, they were all swept. And that's where I mean that dark space. I was like, what did I do? What did I say? What didn't we provide? But in our exit interviews, and based on the fact that I still talk to a lot of them, it wasn't about KDM. It was about the different opportunities. Being able to work in Hawaii, being able to be in Georgia, Texas, Florida, places where we just are not currently, and working in different areas of engineering, not just distribution, because all KDM does in power is distribution. Not having those additional opportunities really, enticed a lot of our older staff to say, all right, I've done this for 5, 6, 7 years. Let's try something different, and it didn't matter in terms of the big companies. It didn't matter for them where they got the talent. It's one of the talent, so they can take on this work now, right? So it's a business move. It's nothing personal. It's a business move, but it's personal for me because obviously I had these individuals from when they graduated until now. So for me to see them all begin to go during 2021, you're like, whoa, what's happening? Like, where are you leaving? And of course, my first thing is, why are you leaving me? But they're not leaving me. They're leaving KDM. And as a business owner, sometimes it gets a little hard to delineate between the two. I would say that is kind of like that spot for the pandemic, because 2020 was our best year ever. 2021, people started to migrate to these bigger companies and bigger opportunities, and they left us. So now we're in a rebuilding phase, and now I'm beginning to bring on more people. So we're on that trajectory to go right back to where we were. But during that time period, that was a dark time period for me, because I took it personally. And then when I stopped taking it personally, basically I allowed myself grace to say, all right, whatever you did, let's think about it. Let's write it down. Let's make sure this doesn't happen again in this way. I mean, who knew about the pandemic? But let's make sure we have some lessons learned there. Now it's time to move. Now it's time to continue to go. You can't just be here and feel bad for yourself. Stuff happens. They did what they did. People left. Congratulations to them. I still talk to a lot of them, and let's go. We got to go. We can't sit here.
It also sounds like your natural desire to mentor, to help people grow, stood you and stands you in good stead, because that is the core of professional services, is being able to keep that churn, being able to attract the people. So I wish you all luck
Yeah.
in that endeavor.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
looking back, one of the things they always say is, when you're in dark times, look back on what you've accomplished. Is there anything that stands out that says this was the proudest moment, or this was a moment where, it really stands out in my mind?
I have a few. The individuals that have left, we had some bonds. I was able to travel with them. I was invited to weddings in different countries. I was invited to meet their families. So I was able to literally, watch them grow from graduation all the way through marriage and kids and everything else. And I don't know what it is about that, but I love that. I love seeing people and seeing how they are able to do what they want to do just in life because of an opportunity that you may have provided to them, right? Now, they could obviously have a job anywhere, but they chose KDM and they chose me to be in their lives. And they invited me not into their professional life, but into their personal and family lives. I probably wouldn't have gone to, Northern India ever. And I'm in the middle of Jaipur, like, wow, look at this infrastructure. I've never, is that in the middle of a river? What is going on? I'm looking at things that I probably, because for no other reason than I didn't know any better. I didn't know anything different. That allows me to expand and think about other areas of travel that I want to now see. I want to now see different villages. Because I was able to do that with my employees, aka some of my good friends. I would love to go back to Beijing with one of my employees and meet their family again and everything else. So, again, just those experiences, I just would have never had them, if I did not. So I would say that is probably like some of the highlights. And then I got my name on a building. Like, that's the other one. Like, holy crap. That is probably, oh man, yeah.
I love it. I love everything you've said. Jaipur is awesome. And funnily enough, I haven't seen it yet. So it's on my bucket list to see one day. So what is the thing that keeps you going through all of this? What is that spark? What is that motivation that keeps you going through all of this?
For me, it's the people. We set goals every year and we hit those goals, which is great, right? A goal is a goal, but it's the people for me. It's being able to see how many lives we can affect positively, how many of them I can convince to stay with me on the CG opportunities and reaching out. When I go to high school, I want to go with a squad, right? I want to go in there and say, look at all of these, women that are with me that are all in positions of power now through my organization, because we all started here with you, just like you, and look at where we are, no matter what the challenge, because we all have challenges. My first job, I didn't even have a women's bathroom in my first job. I had to go into the power plant to do that. So look at the challenges that we all face and look at where we are right now. Like, I love that. So I think that's motivation for me for sure to continue going.
Awesome. And what advice would you give to conclude to those who are listening who may be further behind than you and want to follow in the same footsteps?
I would just say again, continue relationships, continue to build your relationships. You never know who you're going to run into. I am not a fan of burning bridges, no matter what. I've been done wrong by so many different clients and opportunities, but you know what? You write it down. That's a lesson learned. And then you move on, because they might ask you to do something in the future, right? But now you know what happened in the past, and you can make a smart decision on whether you want to continue that relationship. And if that relationship and doing that project gets you notoriety to somebody else, that you don't have to know, you no longer have to go through this person or this company, and now you can be direct to this person. So maintaining your relationships and taking time to give yourself grace when things don't go the way you think they're supposed to go and the timing that you think they're supposed to be done in.
Wise words, and I'm sure I can use them myself. Thank you. Thank you, Kimberly. This has been truly one of the most fascinating conversations and one of the most inspiring.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate the time, the wisdom, the insights that you've shared, and I wish you and KDM all the very best, and CG as well.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate this talk today.
I found Kimberly Moore, her vision, and her journey inspirational at a whole different level. My big takeaways? 1, you need to be alert to and pick up small cues to build big things. Her entrepreneurial journey started as a small tip from a high school science teacher, picked up momentum as she progressed on the path it opened up, and then really transformed what it could become in the way that she founded and still runs her business as well as her nonprofit. What cues are you getting in your own life today that could seed big things tomorrow? 2, she took every opportunity she could to dabble, try, experiment, and just do stuff. She tried different things, but was always grounded in taking action, not just introspecting and planning. What can you do today to express that inner pull in concrete action? 3rd, she was incredibly strategic about navigating within the rigid framework of how utilities do engineering design. And yet, she managed to grow beyond that to build something new, unique, and quite remarkable out of it. How can you work within and then transcend whatever restrictions or constraints you face in your entrepreneurial environment today? Make it happen. Thanks for listening to today's episode. We have show notes and more at achieve.co. That's achieve.co/podcast. Like what you heard? Hit subscribe and share with a friend. See you on the next episode. Now, go be an achiever.